Okay, well, good morning and welcome to the 95th Annual Virtual Southern Region Conference. I am your governor, Michelle Strawser. While we all thought we would be back together in person this year in Tampa, we have to wait a little bit longer. We are approaching the end of the pandemic to where we can see each other in person again real soon. The Southern Region Board has worked to provide a virtual meeting that'll both be informative and fun. I want to thank anybody who attended yesterday's special governor's gathering. It was so great to have the pearls of wisdom from our previous governors, as well as our scavenger hunt and nailed it contest last evening for our social happy hour. The last year has been a difficult one, a little bit different, but change can be hard. Our club presidents have continued to provide the leadership that led their clubs to impacting the lives of women and girls in their local communities, as well as impacting the lives of the women there in their local clubs. The year has required more reflection, encouragement, empathy, and grace, and we saw that with so many of our members and leadership. You'll be happy to know that the Southern Region has been classified a healthy region, and each of you deserve a big round of applause for this accomplishment. Immediate past Governor Caroline and I had to work together in the middle of an unprecedented event to make sure that we kept the region healthy and that we did our budgets and our bienniums together, kind of merged them to make sure that we stayed healthy. Another great piece of news is that we've grown in membership by 11 net members since July 1st of last year. And during a pandemic, that's a huge accomplishment. So a big round of applause for our clubs for continuing to grow their membership base and for continuing to have the passion for Seroptimus through a challenging time to recruit, but a time when more women probably need us than we could ever imagine. We also had 100% participation in Founders Pennies. So when past parliamentarian and past governor and past SIA board member Pat McKay called to let me know that at the start of my term, that was very exciting news that we also achieved that recognition. The most impressive thing we've achieved to date, in my opinion, is that we had 100% participation in the Live Your Dream Awards, which is something we've continued to have as a region, but we had a 30% increase in the number of awards given. So we went from 28 to 36 women helped through the Live Your Dream Award program. And with just 14 clubs, that's a huge accomplishment. We also increased our funds given by 20%, and the Southern Region provided $50,000 in Live Your Dream Award money this past year. So I definitely want to give a shout out to our club presidents and a huge shout out to our Live Your Dream chair, Lorraine Lundy, my second mama from the Tampa Club. So thank you, Mama Lorraine, for staying on top of that program for the Southern Region this year. We are honored to have a keynote speaker, Dr. Aimee Sanchez-Zadak, and Federation guest BJ Gallagher participating in this year's conference as well. So we're very excited to hear from both of them very shortly. And I also wanted to speak a little bit about our Southern Region Board and the fact that we are a global community. So there are some new members that may not be aware that the Southern Region is just a piece of a federation that is much larger than the 5 states that we oversee. So as mentioned earlier, I'm your governor. We also have a governor-elect who will take over next September 1st or July 1st. And then we have a board that serves over this region. And our region is 5 states, as well as Puerto Rico and the Bahamas. And then there are 29 regions. I believe we merged one in our federation, which is Seroptimus International of the Americas. So if you are a new member to us, we welcome you not just to the Southern Region, but to a global organization that has an impact beyond anything that you could really imagine. Governor-elect Kathy will speak about our big goal shortly. And we really want to achieve impacting the lives of 500,000 women and girls over the next decade. So you're coming in at a time where you're going to have an impact that's really going to be felt worldwide. So we are excited you have logged in to join us. We hope you enjoy the presentations. I'm going to play a few welcome videos from our Executive Director, Liz Lucas, as well as our SIA President Penny Babb to get us started. And then we will move on with our live speakers this morning. So thank you guys for attending, and we welcome you to the 95th Annual Virtual Spring Conference.
spring conference. Like you, I wish we were able to be together in person, but know that we will be as soon as humanly possible. Your governor and region board have worked tirelessly and creatively to bring the experience of spring conference home to you. You'll interact with wonderful speakers who will inspire, educate, encourage, and challenge you. You'll meet and celebrate women who have overcome obstacles to achieve their dreams. You'll have the opportunity to support our organization through fun fundraisers. And you'll meet amazing women who will become lifelong friends. Women who, like you, have answered the call to invest in the lives of women and girls. I am so ready for this celebration. Best wishes, my friends, and enjoy your spring conference.
Hello, Sir Optimists. Your dedication and creativity moves our mission forward, keeping Sir Optimists vibrant. As we celebrate 100 years, know in the last 10 years together, we have provided 12,000 women with $17 million in Live Your Dream Award funding, served 75,000 girls through our Dream It Be It program, gained 30% of all new members through our Dream programs. Our past has been bright, and our future is brilliant. Happy 100th anniversary.
Well, hopefully everyone was able to hear that. Those were our two welcome messages from our SIA President Penny Babb and Executive Director Liz Lucas. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Governor-elect Kathy to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Aimee. Governor-elect Kathy. Unmute, Miss Kathy.
Sorry. That's what you're supposed to do when you speak. You're supposed to unmute. I want everybody to remember that if they're supposed to speak. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Aimee Sanchez-Zadak. I've actually known Aimee for at least 20 years, right? We met at the Davy Cooper City Chamber when she was the balloonatic lady. And I was so impressed because one of her clients was the Miami Dolphins. She'd create these beautiful balloon sculptures for them. So that's how I remember meeting her. Since that time, she has received her master's in mental health counseling and her PhD in educational leadership and human services from NOLA Southeastern University. And I am happy to see that she's still the balloonatic lady. However, today, she will be sharing her research and her observations to enlighten us on the really horrible issue of domestic violence. So I would like to now ask Aimee to please unmute, and I will mute. Thank you, Aimee.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And yes, those were wonderful memories. The interesting thing, that little balloon business did turn out to be a big family business, but that's what paid for my graduate school. So it's just an idea to have extra cash, and it turned out amazing. So one question I always get is, what does balloons have to do with therapy or psychology? And I go, both make people happy at the end. You know, that's our end goal. So we focus on that. I've been really blessed because I've taught at Nova Southeastern University for 27 years in the psychology and neuroscience department. And I was given about 10 years a class on human sexuality. And that really led me to a role of, in understanding domestic violence, especially with my students at a very young age. What took me by surprise was the fact that they didn't understand that they were in an abusive relationship. And there were small signs, such as reading text, reading their significant other reading their text, or or isolating them from friends, always keeping them busy. So these were little signs, but the reward is that you teach them and they're listening and they start asking questions. And the questions after class are, Professor, I think I'm in an abusive relationship. And then we move from there. So to me, that is near and dear to my heart, that class. I did not like teaching that class. I was learning more about sexuality from them than I could ever learn from a textbook. So there were a lot of shocking things that I learned. So I kept on asking my dean, do I really need to teach it? But that was a purpose. I believe in purpose, and that's where we are. So, and moving forward, I just want to share that I love to have interaction and discussion throughout the presentation. So feel free to raise your hand or ask a question. This is so that we can be very specific in understanding and asking the right questions. I'll begin by sharing my screen. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
Is it showing that you do? You should, but if you're not seeing the button, we may have
host displayed participant screen sharing. That's all it has. So in saying that, while we move forward with this, oh, here it goes. That was quick. You are good. Okay, so can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
So we start with, it was very intentional to have a beautiful picture of a bride and her groom, only because that's how we see the world. And in domestic violence, it isn't something that is always blatantly obvious. So I want to start by discussing what is domestic violence and how do we see it. So as you can see, we have the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, and the social abuse. The physical abuse is pretty obvious. We take a look at the kicking, slapping, punching, pulling, and that usually happens at a very personal level and a very private level. This you don't see much in public. You may see the after effects of this behavior, but this is not something we really witness as a society in the domestic violence families. So, but what we do need to become aware of are the emotional abuse signs. So it starts with the jealousy, anger, intimidation, the controlling, neglect, humiliation is really one of the key components that we find that starts having the victims isolate themselves. So there's specific discussions and specific behaviors that the spouse provides, especially in talking to someone and constantly humiliating them and making them feel demeaning. Obviously, threats, isolation is another one, and then verbal abuse. So when you put all these together, what you're looking at is you're brainwashing the person to feel isolated and that they are not valued, not only at the home, but throughout. And usually the victim is made to think that everyone else thinks the same way they do. So these are key components. Now, the social abuse is obviously the isolation from friends and isolation from family, and then the stalking. And that's what I mentioned earlier. Stalking doesn't have to be physical. It could also be checking emails, checking social media, what they're doing on social media, what they post on social media, and then checking their phone. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they would like to share before I go to the next screen?
And we put in the chat box, if anybody does have questions, if you can put them in the chat box for Dr. Aimee, and Danielle and I will let her know when they come in.
Beautiful, thank you so much. So then we take a look at the causes and excuses for the domestic violence. And as we all know now with COVID, domestic violence has increased. And I'll get into those numbers a little bit later in the slides. But what we find is the financial pressure, drug and alcohol abuse, gambling by either partner, Post-traumatic stress disorders, that we've had a lot of triggers through 2020 of the post-traumatic stress disorders, and that comes in various ways. Abuse with extended family, generational abuse. It's a learned behavior, where domestic violence is a learned behavior, typical and acceptable male behavior, and then culturally accepted behavior. So what we've found in a lot of the literature since COVID and after the elections is that it appears that some people believe that they have been given, and we hear this politically, but now we're finding it also in the domestic homes. People are being given permission to act out their emotions and aggressiveness. We are in a state that many are unemployed or have lost their businesses. And of course, emotions escalate. And one rule we have, and I know police officers, that one of their worst calls are the domestic violence or any domestic call, because you can't connect. It's very difficult. This is your family. These are families. And how do you teach this person that you're there really to help them? And there's so many pieces to this puzzle. So when the common question that I get from my students is, why doesn't she just leave? And then we have these discussions, and I use a lot of role playing in my classes. So we actually break up into groups and role play on the domestic violence piece so that they can understand what it takes and why it's so difficult to leave and to disconnect from this partner that is supposed to have your best interests in mind. So then we take a look at COVID, as I mentioned, and we looked at the impact that increased throughout the United States, 10 to 28%. And these were key states that we were monitoring. And you can see Jefferson, Alabama was 28%, Portland, 22%, San Antonio, 18%, and New York, 10%. And these were increases in cases. Now, the why behind it, we don't exactly know. The components is obviously one very clear factor is that people were home together and they were on lockdown. And of course, that caused frustration and aggravation, and emotions escalated. Throughout the world, in Pakistan, women increased that. I believe that figure was 48%. I wanted to double check it, but I'm just verbally saying it, but I just want to make sure. I want to check those figures. The Human Rights Commission explained in detail the manner and magnitude of the increase, and it does vary. When we speak about domestic violence, it doesn't always mean it's physical. So the shouting and yelling increased by 76% since COVID. Threatening 49%, and threatening could go from anywhere from I'm going to leave you to I'm going to kill you. So that is the extreme of it. So we take a look at that. Slapping, these are a little bit more disturbing. The slapping increased by 52%, pushing 47%, kicking and punching 40%. So the physical violence did increase as well. But there was a huge increase with the verbal. And we all know that verbal is just as effective, if not more sometimes, than the physical. So we always have great concern when we talk about verbal abuse because of the long-term impact in so many other relationships. So it filters into other relationships in our life. Any questions so far or comments? No. Okay. And then we take a look at the 8 common myths about domestic violence. And domestic violence is only physical. It's not, and we know that. And I worry more about the mental game that is played than anything else. Domestic violence should stay behind closed doors. Most times, domestic violence isn't that serious. Victims usually provoke violence. Violence usually only happens to people of lower income. Domestic violence is due to anger management or impulse control problems. a person can't break from the domestic violence cycle, and it's easy for a victim to escape from abuse. So I'm going to go back to victims usually provoke violence, and most times domestic violence isn't that serious. This is what I hear from, I would say, anywhere from 17 to 30 on our clients. What they justify, oh, it wasn't a big deal. He was angry. He just pushed me. It's the first time. It really isn't anything to worry about. So we justify it in many, many ways. This is just a coping mechanism. And it's a way that we can move forward. It's the tricky part about having and helping domestic violence is victims is the fact that if they're not ready, they're not ready. And you can show them every single proof and data that you have, and they're just not ready to accept it. So it's consistently being there when they need you and understanding that you will be there without judgment. I find that if we pressure domestic violence victims, we lose them. So my goal is not to pressure them and understand. It's harder on us many times because we have to sit in the sidelines and wait and be very vigilant that it doesn't escalate and know when to pull them out if we need to. Violence usually happens to people of lower income. Unfortunately, that is so far from the truth. And we see, and in fact, the upper class domestic violence is kept more at bay and as a secret than the lower class families in lower incomes. So what we find is that the more status you have, the more you will put that makeup on and hide the scars and stay in the relationship longer. The domestic violence is due to anger management. Years ago, about 20 years ago, I remember working on a case, and that was exactly how it was. I mean, every husband was sent to anger management and then sent back home, and then it was triggered again. So that was an interesting process, but we learned that yes, it's anger, but anger management courses won't stop it. Sometimes I use the expression with my students that, we have to understand someone's soul. Personality and behavior can be controlled, personality can be adjusted, but how do you control or change someone's soul? And that's where I connect and they understand, oh, wait a second, I can't change their soul. And then they understand the reality of the difficulty of changing a mindset. And also we analyze the feeling of cravings. When we have a craving, it's very difficult. It's like going, and we simplify it only so our clients can relate to how difficult it is for their significant other to change their behavior. So if you describe, have you ever had a craving or wanting to stay on a diet, and how long does that last? When you know it's for the best, whether it's to lower your blood pressure or lose weight or for health reasons. And then they start connecting just simple things to the reality of, well, if I can't stay 2 weeks away from chocolate, how could this person really control their anger towards hitting me or pushing me or verbally abusing me? And then they start monitoring. We give them, and there are actually apps for this. We give them apps to monitor the behavior and see. And sure enough, that's where they see cycles. We create a baseline and you see a cycle of, oh, he's great for a week. And then after a week, he's back to normal. Then he's good for another week. And that's the cycle. And they start seeing a cycle. We used to journal, but the danger in that is if someone finds their journal. So I definitely don't recommend journaling. Any questions so far? Okay, another thing I wanted to bring up before I went to the last slide, as you can see my pictures on the right, our world is very diversified and changed now. So it's not only heterosexual relationships that are having a high range of domestic abuse, but we also are seeing homosexual relationships. So and that is even more, that's escalated and extremely abusive. I don't think we've really tapped into that relationship and the culture of understanding that. We have a sorority at Nova and a fraternity and groups that are the LGBTQ plus, and I work closely with them too in understanding that, because again, no one's really reached out on what are really the dynamics of the LGBTQ relationships in domestic abuse. Why is it occurring so much? And there's a lot of stress that's carried in. They lose their families. Some families are not in agreement with their lifestyle. So you have the stress of, I can't go home. I have no home. I have no friends that don't understand me. And then you also have the fact that it's still, to an extent, in many areas, a taboo. So we're dealing with a lot of isolation emotionally, and then cultural processes that haven't been developed strong enough. So I am seeing extreme high domestic violence in the culture of LGBTQ. And then I put this in because I thought this was a great social media post that this young lady posted. And it says, after getting called disgusting last night, I successfully dropped 200 pounds. And as you can see, the picture was her husband actually. And then in the next picture, she cut him out. So that was a quick fix to something that it starts that way. These are exactly the processes. Oh, you think you look great? You don't look great. And they start chipping away on humiliation to the point that then we get to the point that we start believing it. So I thought that was a very real post. I thought it was a very real depiction of what really domestic violence looks like in girls. These are the young ladies that are experiencing this. This is what they look like. So we're not talking again about small families in a rural area. These are young girls that are experiencing domestic violence every day. Oops. And then this is another photo. I'm a firm believer that a picture speaks 1,000 words. So when we take a look at domestic violence, these are the brides and these are the consequences. You have a beautiful picture. And then of course, in the back, you see all the bruises. And it's really important to understand that sometimes it starts before the marriage. And we, again, have that idea that, I want to get married, I want to have kids. It's okay. After we get married, everything will be okay. I'll take care of him. And this still exists. This still exists. I asked my students, they were, in my classes, in my human sexuality classes, I usually have about 25 females and about 5 males that take my class. And the females, it was interesting because there were these applications and there were these processes that we're using for dating, and it was a competition. It really ended up, the girls are competing. And so there were a lot of behaviors that they were sharing with me that I'm getting probably way too old, but they were inappropriate, right? So, and I said, how do you feel doing that? And it was, again, I learned more from them, and they were sharing, well, there's so much competition. If we don't do this, then we're not going to have a date. We're not going to have a husband. And that blew my mind. I stood there and I was speechless. And then, you sit back and you start saying, okay, how can I re-educate these girls in understanding? Because we all want to be loved. We want to have a companion, and we all want to share our life with someone, right? That's the package. So it's interesting to understand that this still is a truth that many, many, many girls carry. And again, we're fortunate at Nova to have many cultures that come in and they share their story and how their upbringing. So we talk about belief system, and we talk about how we can shift a belief system from their small town to what it is now. And it really starts as soon as they start learning as a child, 2, 3, 4, as soon as they start remembering. We see that this belief system on how males should treat females, or how husbands should treat wives, or how relationships should work, they start at a very early age. And then we also find out that by the age of 8 or 9, it's pretty well grounded already on what they think the world should be like and how they should be treated as a human being. So I always stress with my young parents that have just had children that before the age of 7 or 8, these are where the ground rules begin. And that means everything, whether it's a religious belief or whether it's a family belief. Really important, because once they go into middle school, that gets a little complicated for you to get engaged. So any rules that are created through foundations are created by the age of 7. So thank you. I appreciate everyone who's listened to me. This is again near and dear to my heart. I welcome anyone to attend my classes and speak on domestic violence, or listen or ask questions. I think we have a great platform in each individual class. As I shared with Kathy earlier before the meeting started, it's a little difficult to go to the university and say, I want to make sure that we put posters everywhere about domestic violence, because it raises an alarm to the parents that are sending their kids to college, that it's not safe. And this goes to colleges all around the world. There's an excellent group called Catharsis, and they are a team of young women and men who go from college to college and speak about domestic abuse through plays. And they teach them what's appropriate and what's inappropriate in a relationship. It's an excellent group. I met them in Chicago, and I was actually at a hotel, and I was going to do my laundry, and there was a little ballroom downstairs, and I heard screaming and yelling as if it was domestic violence. And of course, my radar went in, and I went into the room running, thinking there was a problem here. They were role playing, and it was meant to be, because it created a 12-year relationship with them. So there's a lot of information out there. It's how we present it and have people remember it. So I urge everyone to please tell the story, or learn a story, or listen to the story, so that we can definitely teach. People will remember stories. And my students, when I tell the stories, that's what they walk away and remember. And then they start relating to themselves. And then it takes a little bit, but you can see it in their eyes. And then they approach you and they ask for help. So it's very near and dear to my heart. It is a platform that I take extremely seriously. And I've been very lucky. Carol Hatton introduced me to Detective Burnett and Davey, and he speaks in my class every semester. And he brings the dog, and he shares how the whole process works. And yes, he scares them. He scares my students. And I think that element of fear is healthy, just a little bit, because it keeps them aware, and awareness is just the beginning. So again, thank you very much. If you have any questions, I have not looked in the chat yet, but if you have any questions, I would love to, or ideas or thoughts.
Dr. Aimee, there are a couple of questions. One was sent in privately, and it is, what about the fear of the domestic violence coming into your life as a result of helping someone? So such as you're helping a domestic violence victim and the abuser attacks you.
Right. And that's an excellent question, because you should never be in that alone. There should be a team effort. So that's critical, and it's an excellent question. So you have to be very careful. We're not going to go in, as I did in Chicago, we try to put on our cape. That is something that we have to be very aware of. And actually that is something that it is a huge risk. So yes, my first gut reaction is you call the police. If you know someone, we're going to go step by step. I take very, very small steps, and I am extremely careful on how I walk that person through the process. What we clearly discuss is confidentiality. So keep in mind, the victim trusts their predator. I mean, it's a full trust thing. So my conversation is, I know you trust him. I know he loves you, but you and I are going to just have a conversation, just you and I. And we're going to share. I am the person you can come to share things, and it will go no further. Now, as a therapist, I always say, if you are to be harmed, or anyone else is to be harmed, then absolutely 100%. I am going to have to take action, and they're very well aware of that. It's using your discretion. You're going to have individuals that you're going to have to be a little bit more sensitive to others, and you'll see by their behavior. Obviously, we're not all trained to do this. So if you see someone that's really high risk, I would absolutely put someone on alert that's trained to do this. I'll tell you a quick story. There was a athlete that in the balloon world, Kathy, I was doing a design for an athlete, and he had just gotten married, and his young wife, they were both 27. His wife used to be a prison guard. And she was sharing how stressed out he was because they had just signed a multi-million-dollar contract, and all of a sudden all his family members were coming and saying, hey, remember me, kind of thing. So he was very stressed because he was carrying the burden of, being the savior of his entire family. So, and she says that he was, being a little verbally abusive. And this is while I'm decorating her house. And she knew I taught at Nova. So it was interesting to see how that evolved. Well, 2 days later, she stabbed him. And he survived. And my husband says, hey, remember this person? And, I reached out to her. The first question I asked my husband was, did she stab him multiple times or just one? And he goes, that's the weirdest question you can possibly ask anybody. And there was a reason behind it. Because if it was multiple, it was anger and revenge, right? If it was only single, it was self-defense. And that's the way I was profiling it. And it was single. So she was trying to protect herself. So right then and there, I knew that something had escalated. So I called her immediately, and she shared with me what happened. And she went away for a while, but I must say they're still together. So how that relationship works, they moved away. They're no longer here in Florida, but that isn't uncommon. And I saw them on a talk show, and it was exactly what we know. The story changes to fit their lifestyle. And that will be justified because there's a lot to lose there. So it's not always, I can't say that was not a happy ending. It was just your typical ending. That's how it works, especially with high profile individuals.
Thank you so much. There's one more question in there from Helen Bailey. She says, what's the follow-up when they discovered a cycle?
I'm not clear on what.
I guess when a cycle is discovered of an abusive relationship, I'm trying to figure out when she was saying that.
Yeah, you mentioned they don't keep journals, but they were keeping tabs somehow on how, and they discovered a cycle, a week later, that kind of thing. So I just wondered, is there a follow-up, or where do you go from there?
Right. So yes, definitely the application, I love apps, on your phone, because it's really interesting to understand. So to be quite frank, we use very unusual apps for that. So there's an app that we actually use for menstrual cycles. I use it with my teenage clients, and it's to monitor another. I'm just going to add this because it's really very correlated. One thing I'm finding is that young girls are not taught that during their cycle, their emotions are going to change. Their feelings are going to change. They don't feel good. We feel bloated. There's a lot of processes, but they're not being taught that this is okay to be moody, for lack of a better term, not to feel well, not to be yourself. So there's an application called Care that you can monitor your cycle, right? And why I like that is so that you can really monitor your mood. But if you tell someone here, monitor your mood, they're going to say, oh no. So I go back and I look at, when they log down and you can write on that app, I was angry today. You can say that, or you can use a number or a code. That allows you to understand your mood cycle. Well, I have them use that for their significant others as well, because they think the significant other thinks it's just an app for your cycle, but in actuality, you're monitoring their behavior. Doesn't matter, but you see the cycle. And then we sit and we talk about it. And this happens if I have a student that approaches me, I see them once a week, and they always text me, always. They have 24/7. All my students do. But once a week, we'll sit there and we'll say, how did it go? And I can see sometimes when they're in a rush that there's something that happened. And again, you've got to give them a little bit of freedom because they're already contained. So if I see that they're avoiding me in one of the classes, I'll let that go. And then in the next class, I'll just approach them and just say, I know we didn't follow up that week. I just want to make sure that I don't lose track of what's going on with you. And that's how we do, but absolutely follow up. And the applications are phenomenal. Baselines are great. We very rarely introduce ourselves to ourselves and understanding what our habits are in our cycles. So it's interesting when we study that, and I've studied it on myself as well. For instance, April for me is a terrible month, and I couldn't figure out, 18 years and, but like 5 years, April is, I'm off. Well, my mother passed away April 8th. So it was that piece, and I was always off. So when you put it on paper or on an application, or now with technology, there's so much technology, we start understanding about ourselves and we say, oh, okay, well, that's okay. Not only am I going to warn myself it's going to be a bad month or a bad year or a bad week, but now I am ready to deal with the world, because I'm not going to deal with the world the same way if I'm not 100% emotionally engaged. And in layman's terms, we say we're off. I feel off. And you can see it. You answer the phone and anything and everything someone tells you aggravates you. You can tell by if your husband breathes, it just bothers you, or if he chews a certain way, it's like, oh my God, just stop chewing. So, little things like that. So these are our triggers that something's off, and it's us. And how do we reel it in or disengage from the environment for a little bit so that we can get back? Because that's a beautiful thing about our mind. We can help it get to where we want to be. So good question. Thank you so much.
And there's one more in there from Yvonne. It says, what responsibility do we have when children are involved?
That's definitely, we have to call social services. We, however, call 911 and we call the authorities, and then they take it from there. I must tell you, Davy's got it down packed. Davy Police, they just have the rhythm. They have it wonderfully done. And what you all have been doing with the backpacks, the Seroptimus, there's so many pieces to the puzzle that we need to think of. And it's really literally sitting there with a checklist and walking through the entire process of everything that's going to happen. So, they're going to need toothpaste, they're going to need toothbrushes, they're going to need soap, they're going to need a teddy bear. They're going to need, here's the emotional side of what they're going to need. And this is the physical side of what they're going to need. And how do we put it all together? And at the end of the day, all humans want is to be loved. And we share it in different ways. And unfortunately, some people define love as, I don't care how they love me. They always come home at night. Yes, they beat me up a little bit or verbally abuse me, or I can never do anything right, but I'm loved and I'm taken care of. So how do we teach them? And what the detective shared with us, which was a huge component, was the canines that they send into a room. And the example he gave was a young girl, 19 years old, had been not only a domestic violence, but it was human trafficked. And she had been there for 3 years. And when they pulled her out and rescued her, she was relating to her predator, and she did not want to be rescued because where was she going to go? And so he says it becomes extremely difficult to even speak to her, whether it's a female officer or a male officer, especially a male officer. So they brought in the canine unit, and he went into the room with her and did his beautiful thing of loving and nurturing and unconditional love. And he was in with her for about an hour. And when they saw that she started relating to him and softening up her body language, the female detective went in, and then they were able to at least get her to a place that she was listening. So they do have it down pat, and we're really blessed to have them.
That's wonderful. I see one more in here from District Director 2, Rosetta. She says, how can we sign up or be involved in your class? Or do you have anything that's virtual that we can see?
We start now. Summer's on August. I started. We don't know yet at Nova what's happening. We're trying to get everybody in the same page. But right now it will be on ground. You can email me. I will write my email in the chat, and you can email me, call me. And schedule it. You don't have to go through a formal process whatsoever. So, and I'd love to have you, and I think my students would love to have you. I don't know if you all can see my email there. So we have a group at Nova called the Lifelong Learning Institute, and we have retired individuals who go to this lifelong learning, and we have speaking engagements. And I met, I think there are about 250 members in there. So I invite them to my class, and I break my students into groups with my lifelong learning mentors, because we have discussions, and we have doctors and attorneys, and everyone's been, is retired, and judges. And we have discussions of what's going on real time. So it's current event, whether it's human sexuality or interpersonal communication, which is another one of my classes, and grief and bereavement. That's really one of my top classes, where we teach in young people that it's not always depression. Sometimes it's pain and hurt. So we always kick into, instead of understanding sadness, we kick into, oh, I'm depressed. And so when we have these discussions, we realize, oh, wow, wait, no, yes, my boyfriend broke up. I'm not depressed. I'm sad. I'm hurt. I'm angry. So we have a lot of great discussions. And I think you all would really, really enjoy talking to the students. There's so much to teach them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Governor Michelle or Governor-elect Kathy?
And I just want to say, Aimee, could you turn off your screen?
Oh, sorry.
Please.
Okay.
I do want to say thank you so much, Aimee, for coming. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell everybody you're the newest, if not among the newest members of the Davy Club. If I didn't tell you, Angie Krumenacker would kill me, but I won't do that. So glad to have you here. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much.
We'll see you again, maybe live.
Yes, that'd be great.
That'd be nice.
Thank you.
Governor Michelle, would you like me to introduce our next speaker, or would you like to go ahead? Is it mine?
Yeah, you can go ahead, Governor-elect Kathy. Thank you.
Our next speaker is past Governor Priscilla, and she will be telling us about the 100th birthday virtual event. And I believe Secretary Danielle has the presentation.
Thank you, Governor-elect Kathy. That was a great presentation, and as long as I've been hearing about domestic violence, there's always something new to learn, and who knew you could use an app to track things like that? That's a nice added feature that I didn't know about. But now for something completely different. This October, Seroptimist International turns 100 years old, and I'm here to personally invite you to join with Seroptimists from all 5 federations to the global birthday celebration. Next slide. There's a century of Seroptimists transforming the lives of women and girls around the world, and that is definitely something worth celebrating. Although we wish we could meet in person, pandemic realities do not allow us to do so. But we don't want to miss the opportunity for members to come together. So we'll gather virtually to honor our 100 years as a global voice for women, while also creating unforgettable, exciting new memories as we begin the journey forward into our brilliant future. The event will take place October 1st through 3rd, with timing based on where our members are in the world. For those of us here in Southern Region, our date and time options are October 2nd and 3rd at 11 a.m. Central or noon Eastern time. Or if you're a late owl, October 1st and 2nd at 10 p.m. Central and 11 p.m. Eastern. Next slide. This is your chance to connect with Seroptimists from around the world, be inspired by our keynote speaker, and gain new insights from discussions among members and breakout sessions. And to ensure the event is inclusive for all members, it will be offered in 5 languages: English, Chinese, French, Japanese, and Korean, with all materials and speakers translated. Next. An exciting array of activities and sessions is planned, which you won't want to miss. Additional event speakers, content, and celebration activities will be announced as they are finalized. But this slide outlines the program activities planned at this point for each of the 4 sessions. Next. Opportunities are available for members or clubs to help defray event expenses by selecting one of the sponsorship package opportunities reflected on this slide. Each level includes 1 registration and provides exciting ways for you to connect with our global network of members and clubs. Next slide. Registration for the celebration is now open, and I encourage you to sign up as soon as possible to receive the greatest savings. Early bird registration, which goes through June 14th, is just $40 per person. As of June 15th, it will increase to $50, and last minute registration at $75 begins September 15th. You can find multiple links to the event and registration information on the SI website at www.seroptimistinternational.org or on the Seroptimist International Facebook page. The registration process is fairly straightforward, but if you have any questions at all when registering, there is a contact email address at the bottom of each page you can use to submit your questions. Next slide. When you click on the Register tab, you'll see this table presented where you can select your language of preference and then identify which date and time you prefer. For instance, if you want to attend in English, you have 2 options for your first session: either 2000 hours Pacific time, which is 10 p.m. Central time or 11 p.m. Eastern time Friday evening, or option 2, 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is my choice, of 11 a.m. Central and noon Eastern time. Your second session will be 24 hours later, 10 or 11 p.m. Saturday or 11 a.m. or noon on Sunday. It sounds complicated when I explain it, but it really isn't that complicated if you look at the screen and make your choice. Choice 1 is if you are a late owl and want to do it, or option 2 if you want to do it in the morning. And it's just the consecutive days. Or if you prefer to do it in another language, feel free. If you want to see what it sounds like in a different language, you can have all those options also. Next slide. Once you've made your selections, the checkout screen will look similar to this. All prices are reflected in US dollars, and for non-US regions, your credit or debit card provider will convert that cost to your local currency at the applicable exchange rate on the day of purchase. And you can also, if you want to do a Centennial sponsor or one of the other sponsorships, you know, $100, $1 for every year of Soroptimist will get you a Centennial sponsor and get your picture on the Soroptimist International sponsorship page. So, but $40 is all it'll cost for you to do this. Next slide. So thank you for the opportunity to share the exciting information with you. I look forward to seeing you at this once-in-a-lifetime event as Soroptimists around the world celebrate and reflect on our bright past and step forward together towards our brilliant future. So be there, be square. All right. And then I think I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker. So it's my pleasure to introduce our 2021 Federation official visitor, BJ Gallagher. The Southern Region Board met with her earlier this week, and I'm sure you'll find her as enjoyable as we did. You may have read her bio in the call to conference, so I won't repeat all that here. But she comes to us with a great amount of experience, having been a member from Western Canada region for 33 years. Career-wise, BJ was in the corrections industry. She retired at 50 and since then has held several other jobs, including real estate and escorting contractors through prisons as a commissioner. She must be one tough lady. On the lighter side, she has 5 children, 6 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. Just another Soroptimist Wonder Woman. Please help me welcome Federation Board member, BJ Gallagher.
Thank you, Priscilla. Do you believe? As a Federation Board member, I have accepted the highest level of leadership in our Federation. I have done this because I am wholeheartedly committed to ensuring Soroptimists can achieve our 2021-2031 big goal to invest in the dreams of 500,000 women and girls through access to education. I bring my talents, skills, and passion to the board of directors, but what you might not know is that not only do I give much of my time and energy to Soroptimist, but I also support the organization financially through monthly giving, supporting Soroptimist Foundation of Canada, my club as much as possible, and through SIA. There are several things I know to be true. I know education is the best tool for women and girls to achieve economic empowerment. I know economic empowerment is the most effective way to permanently transform a woman or girl's life. I know our dream programs are the best way we can provide access to education and increase economic empowerment for women and girls. I know that members, clubs, regions, and leaders need to make the DREAM programs the focus of their work and charitable giving for us to succeed. I know that when clubs and regions align their activities with our 2021-2031 big goal, we will be better known for our impact. I know that when we reach our 2021-2031 big goal, we will have left a positive impact on the lives of women and girls. We also will have transformed our organization, leaving a Soroptimist legacy that each of you will be proud to tell your granddaughters and daughters about. I know women and girls still face tremendous obstacles to success. They are waiting for us to help. I know that by financially supporting SIA, we can become the organization we say we want to be, one with more members, supports, and greater capacity to serve more women and girls. And lastly, I know that Soroptimist will rise fearlessly to the challenge. As members of the Federation Board, we give a gift of personal significance annually. We use this language because we have different resources, and so the amount of the gift will vary from member to member, from club to club, and from region to region. Each of the Federation Board members have made personally significant gifts to support our Global Dream programs because we believe in our mission. Today I ask, do you believe in our mission? Do you believe in our collective impact? Do you believe our Global Dream programs have the power to positively transform the lives of 500,000 women and girls? If you do, join me in making an annual gift of personal significance to our organization, to Soroptimist. You and I must continue to do everything that we can to provide the resources and opportunities women and girls need to achieve their full potential and live their dreams. Your support towards our big goal now will help to maximize our impact for years to come. Women and girls we serve are counting on us now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you so much, BJ. We appreciate you being here and the information you have to share. If it's okay with you, we'd like to see if there's any questions from the members that they may have of you. Are you okay for a question and answer if there are any?
Yes.
Excellent. Members, if you have any questions for BJ, please go ahead and post them in the chat box, and we can see if there are if there's anything she can clear up for anybody if you do. I know later today during our pillar presentation, I'll be speaking about the Laurel Society and club giving, and so it'll follow a little bit on the message that you just shared.
Thank you.
I actually am not seeing any questions. Governor-elect Kathy, did you have anything for BJ? Oh, there you are.
Unmute, I know.
Unmute.
I figured it out. I just want to say it was very nice meeting you, BJ, and thank you so much for your presentation. And we hope to see you sometime in real life.
Maybe in Korea.
Maybe in Korea.
Also very fun, yes. So the Korea announcement was in everybody's call to conference. So make sure you guys save the dates. And we had a great time in Japan and look forward to seeing you in Korea for sure. So at this time, even though it's not listed on the agenda, we are running a little bit ahead of schedule. So we're going to take a 10-minute break just in case anybody wants to get a drink or